On Capitol Hill, this is a place of business from 9 to 5.
So this is where I hang my hat and I lay my head every evening.
But by night, dozens of lawmakers like Congressman Dan Donovan convert their Capitol Hill offices into studio apartments.
Welcome to my accommodations. I have to make sure every night I retape that so it doesn't keep me up at night.
This closet-sized room isn't exactly the lap of luxury.
Is this comfortable, Congressman?
It works. I'm fortunate enough to have a half bath right here, but as you can see, it's kind of an institutional bath with the tiling and the makeup.
Members of Congress make $174,000 a year, while maintaining a residence in the neighborhoods around the U.S. Capitol can easily cost approximately $2,000 a month.
There are many members who, because of their wealth before they came to Congress, are able to buy an apartment, buy a townhouse. And there's others of us who have a family, limited income, and certainly have expenses back home that don't afford us the ability to have a home down here.
But in a letter to the Ethics Committee, some House members complain that others are, quote, subject to seeing and at times interacting with members in their sleeping attire, underwear, and even partially nude. They also are calling the practice offensive and contributing to a hostile work environment. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries says it's a misuse of public resources.
Why do you have individual members of Congress sleeping in their offices on the taxpayers' dime? And I was part of an effort to try to draw some attention to it to see if we can get resolution.
One resolution some here on Capitol Hill are floating, providing makers with a per diem to help with living expenses, as state legislatures do, or a cost of living salary increase. Currently, lawmakers do not receive any kind of per diem to help with living expenses, but they are able to deduct up to $3,000 in housing expenses a year.
If you look at the state legislature, if you look at anybody else in the federal government, when they have to work outside of their home districts, their home area, they get a per diem. What this letter highlights is the need for a per diem here in Washington, D.C., so that members are not subject or be compelled to have to reside in their offices.
Donovan isn't a fan of the per diem idea. He says he thinks that's a waste of taxpayer resources.
It serves what I needed to serve and nothing more, nothing less.
In Washington, Samantha-Jo, Spectrum News.
Let's release the number. Oh, yeah, don't worry. 100%.
President Trump caught on an open mic, reassuring a lawmaker Tuesday that he planned to allow a controversial GOP memo on the FBI to become public after a House panel voted along party lines to release it this week. The document, drafted by House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, apparently alleges that the Bureau and the Justice Department abused their surveillance power by using an opposition research dossier on Donald Trump and Russia to get a surveillance warrant for one-time Trump advisor Carter Page. Now the FBI is sounding the alarm, issuing a rare public statement saying it has grave concerns about the accuracy of this memo.
Transparency is a good thing for all Americans. They need to see what went on. Some of the things that are in there without me sharing the classified side of things are very concerning.
Congressman Mark Meadows wants the memo released, something that only a select number of lawmakers have actually seen.
I have not seen the memo. I have been briefed on it, but I think there's a lot of questions these days about the FBI and about the Department of Justice, particularly during the previous administration. And I think people want to know that they approach their job apolitically.
Democrats say releasing the document is a political tactic.
It is troubling that they would jeopardize our security for political reasons.
The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee did draft a rebuttal memo, but the panel decided against releasing that one in another partisan vote.
If they're really committed to the American people knowing the truth, release both.
I went down today to actually look at the Democrat memo. And the Democrat memo, if it were changed to get rid of a few of the factual inaccuracies and a few of the inconsistencies within that memo, I'm willing to release that as well.
The president has 5 days to review the document and weigh in on its release. In Washington, Samantha-Jo, Spectrum.
Nearly 12,000 service members in the U.S. military are dealing with a spouse or family member who's facing deportation. That's according to a national immigration advocacy group. Our Washington Bureau reporter Samantha-Jo has a story of a Florida family at risk of being separated and how Congress is considering ways to help.
I'm a military wife, regardless whether I have a green card or not.
Alejandra Juarez and her husband, a former Marine sergeant, have spent years and thousands of dollars fighting her deportation.
Thank you so much.
Because Juarez entered the country illegally when she was 18 years old, she's not eligible for a green card, but she's made a life for her family in Davenport, Florida.
I'm not pleading on behalf of myself because I know I did something wrong, but I'm pleading on behalf of my family.
Please let my mom stay because she is a great mom and I don't understand why I have to leave her.
My dad did sacrifice a lot for this country, and so we were already separated for that time while he was gone. So I can't really understand why we have to be separated again, especially when my mom has no criminal record.
Congressman Darren Soto and a group of Democratic lawmakers are scrambling to address this problem through legislation, which is similar to a program called Parole in Place that allows undocumented family members of active duty troops and veterans to stay in the country and pursue a green card.
The bill is to help in the long run allow for spouses of military families to have priority with immigration.
As the Trump administration continues to crack down on illegal immigration, immigration attorneys I spoke with say they are warning their military clients not to rely on this Parole in Place program. Now, we reached out to the White House and Immigration and Customs Enforcement to clarify the status of this program, but they did not respond to our request for comment.
Democrats and Republicans need to come together, including the president.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Time is running out for Juarez's family. Alejandra has less than 2 months until her deportation orders go into effect. She says she worries most about her 2 daughters.
I didn't want them to go through. They're too young to go through all this.
In Washington, Samantha-Jo, Spectrum News 13.
Now, a spokeswoman for Senator Marco Rubio's office says they have been in contact with Mrs. Juarez and are trying to assist her, but did not clarify whether they support.
In a little over 6 minutes, 17 of our friends were taken from us, 15 were injured.
The real disruption to the educational process is staring down the barrel of a gun.
I am here for you, so you don't ever have to fear of getting shot in your own classroom.
Survivors of the deadly shooting in Parkland, Florida, leading the charge as hundreds of thousands of people engulfed Pennsylvania Avenue, demanding action to end gun violence.
Never again! Never again!
Emotions still running high, roughly 1 month since the tragedy in Florida.
Welcome to the revolution.
This army of activists is calling for stricter gun laws, including bans on assault-style weapons and high-capacity magazines.
I feel like I'm a voice for my students who are too young to be here, who have to be afraid every single day that they come into school.
3rd grade teacher Amanda McNally says the prevalence of these tragedies have forced her to confront the possibility that this could happen in her own classroom.
Where do I need to go if something were to happen? You know, can my key lock this door? Can I, protect the kids that are in the hallway? What do I need to do if something were to happen?
People of all ages demonstrating together. Many of them teenagers who have grown up in the shadow of school shootings.
That it could potentially happen to us, and you don't expect it to ever happen, but it does.
As massive crowds gather here on Pennsylvania Avenue, members of Congress are back in their home districts for a 2-week recess, and President Trump is at Mar-a-Lago for the weekend. But activists I spoke with here say they believe their message is being heard here and at rallies across the country.
I do think that if we keep using our voices and standing up for what we believe in, then we are the generation that will make a change.
Calls for gun control at the federal level likely an uphill battle. It's been more than 2 decades since major legislation on the topic has been passed. But these students acknowledge that their work has only just begun.
And I hope that people just don't forget after, a day in March that this is something that still needs to happen, because I'm sure there will be more shootings between now and November, so hopefully it's not something they forget.
In Washington, Samantha-Jo, New York 1.
New demands for gun safety reforms in wake of the deadly shooting in South Florida. Many in Washington are shifting their attention towards the need for mental health support and treatment. Our Spectrum News reporter Samantha-Jo is in our D.C. bureau with a
the difficult issue
of mental health.
Some of the issues, too, of mental health.
Put in place sweeping mental health reform.
Dangerous people, mentally ill people.
The White House and some lawmakers are pointing to mental health in response to the school shooting in Parkland, Florida.
But in the old days, you'd put them into a mental institution.
President Trump advocated for more institutions to deal with mental health on Monday. It's a topic members of both parties are addressing, but in different ways.
I don't want folks who have serious mental problems to be able to go in and purchase a gun.
Democratic lawmakers Bill Pascrell and Carolyn Maloney are introducing a bill to reinstate the Obama-era mental health background check for gun purchases. President Trump repealed the rule last year, which required Social Security officials to report records of some mentally ill people deemed incapable of managing their finances to the FBI's background check system.
You need a multitude of actions to cut access to guns and bullets from people that are mentally deranged. There's no question that he was mentally deranged.
How much would this actually help?
Zero. It's a red herring. Anytime you chase mental illness in relation to gun violence, it's a red herring. And the reason is because less than 3 to 5% of all violence in the United States is attributable to serious mental illness.
Dr. Liza Gold edited the book Gun Violence and Mental Illness. She says reinstating the Obama-era rule would not decrease gun violence.
The evaluation of whether someone can afford to whether someone is competent to manage their own finances has nothing to do with a risk assessment for violence.
While both Democrats and Republicans are continuing to explore ways to address mental health and gun violence, there's still no bill on the topic that has bipartisan support, and that includes Pascrell and Maloney's bill.
We clearly believe that there is a gap in our background check system that needs to be filled.
While not related to mental health, there seems to be momentum for another gun bill known as Fix NICS, which would ensure states report criminal information to a federal database. But those checks do not cover gun shows or online sales. The House already passed a version in December, but it's tied to another measure that would allow reciprocity of concealed carry permits across state lines, which could be a non-starter in the Senate. In Washington, Samantha-Jo,